I'm Sarah Benson, the Artistic Director of Soho Rep, and I'm here with Yang Jean Lee, Writer-Director of Leah, that just went into rehearsal this week. That is beginning performances in January. So we're here to talk about Yang Jean's work and Leah. So yeah, I'd love to just, hear a bit about how you discovered Soho Rep, because I know you were here before you made your show here.
I was living in New Haven and I was working on a dissertation. I was, I don't know, I just sort of went crazy and decided that I wanted to be a playwright, even though, I had no experience and didn't know anybody in theater and, had never been backstage in a theater. And
what was it about it that made you feel like you wanted to work in the theater?
Well, it was the therapist. I was going crazy, so I went to a therapist and she said, I'm going to ask you a question, I want you to answer it off the top of your head, don't even think about the answer. And she said, what do you want to do with your life? And I said, I want to be a playwright. And the idea had never even really occurred to me before, so it was really embarrassing. And, but she kind of convinced me that the reason, because I was studying Shakespeare in grad school and working on a dissertation on King Lear, and she sort of, we sort of figured out that the reason why I was studying Shakespeare was because I loved theater and I wanted to be a playwright, and I didn't know, because it was so suppressed. I realized that Yale School of Drama existed, so I went, I looked up the names of all the playwrights who were teaching there in their program at the time, and there was a playwright named Jeff Jones, and his play was my favorite, and it was really weird, and I didn't know anything.
Which play was it?
It was 70 Scenes of Halloween.
Oh, that's amazing.
And I guess that was really my first encounter with any sort of experimental theater beyond Beckett and Ionesco. So I was like, wow, and I emailed him and I said, will you meet with him? Will you meet with me? And he said, sure. And so we met in a cafe, and he
up in New Haven, or in
New Haven.
Okay.
And he gave me a list of names and of artists and theater companies, and Soho Rep was at the top of the list. The first day in New York, I showed up late, and so I went to see my first play in New York, and it was Richard Maxwell's Drummer Wanted.
Oh man, with Pete Simpson
at the Performing Garage with Pete Simpson, who's now in Lear, and I was so excited, and I thought, oh my gosh, I've so made the right decision to come to New York. The theater here is amazing.
What was it about Richard's play that you loved?
Well, I had just, I'd never seen anything like that before. I didn't know who Richard Foreman was. For the first 6 months I was in New York, I kept referring to Richard Foreman as George Foreman. The next morning I woke up and I came down to the theater. The office was there at the time in this dank basement, and I just rang the buzzer. And Alex Conley, who was the executive director at the time, came up and she was like, yes, and I told her I wanted to intern, and I think they had probably been receiving tons of applications and just didn't have time to deal with it, but she was like, all right, come in, and we just talked, and she was like, this is our basement, and she and Daniel, who was the artistic director then, he and Alex were crammed down there, and she said, okay, you can intern for us. So that was how I first got to know this theater.
How did the appeal end up? You end up directing that here.
Oh, well, if you intern here, you get a production.
Oh! Broadcast that to everyone, so that,
No, I interned here for a year, and then I worked here part-time for a year as an administrative assistant, and I was in Mac's playwriting program, and I was really having a hard time. I had terrible writer's block, and Mac finally just told me, write the worst play you can think of. So I did that. When Mac told me just do the worst thing you could think of, I thought, okay, well, what would, because I wanted to be cool, and then I thought, what would these people think the least cool thing was to do? And so I thought, oh, a historical drama, a historical play about the English romantic poets hanging out and talking about art and life, which was also my worst nightmare. And then Daniel Ocken got a copy of it, and this story that Mac tells me is that Daniel called him like, you know, really late at night, you know, and said like, wow, like this is, you know, this script is really interesting. I just don't know how she's gonna do it. You know? And so there was like a long period of, you know, deliberation on his part. Like it was a real risk. But Daniel, you know, like this was a full production. Like the theater was paying for it, and it was a really, you know, I was completely unknown. You know, and I just feel like it was such an act of courage on his part, you know, like he liked the play, he had no idea, you know, like, you know, he'd only seen me direct one play, I'd only directed one play in my life, you know, I was so untested, and the script was so crazy, and like he couldn't even really imagine how it would be done, and so that was, and I had no idea what I was doing.
But it's something about like your, you know, like, your work as a director as well. Like I feel like you're, you know, like I read your plays and I just adore them, and like I see your direction and I feel like it's the best direction I see as well, and it's just this kind of amazing marriage. So I feel like a huge part of your approach is in the direction too. Like
my strategy for making theater is just to, you know, pick like really impossible things that I can't do by myself, and then surround myself with geniuses, and then just, you know, have us all like sort of beat our brains out. And I think like, you know, if I were to point to, you know, to one one reason why any of my shows work, it's because I really don't care whose idea it is. Like I just want the best idea. And you know, like I just, you know, my actors and my assistant directors, my associate director, like you know, my designers, like everybody, my dramaturg, everybody who's involved in the process is just so talented. And so it's really like, you know, a group brain. I'm definitely not like you know, one of those directors who just, you know, knows exactly how they want everything to be, and then just like, you know, everybody is like their puppet, you know, it's not, I don't work that way at all.